All right, picture this for a second. We're in 9th century England. The land is completely swallowed by freezing fog. And honestly, the stench of death is just everywhere. And standing right in the middle of this bleak, terrifying landscape is an English king. But he's smiling. He's smiling down into a pit of venomous snakes because his absolute worst enemy in the world is trapped at the bottom. The guy down there is broken, he's scarred, but his eyes, they are burning with this absolute, terrifying defiance. This right here, this is the story of an empire built from literally nothing. Now, you'd think the broken man would beg, right? Nope. Instead, he looks up at the king, and he actually laughs. He shouts out, "The little piglets will squeal when they hear how the old boar died." Guys, this wasn't just some random prisoner. This was Ragnar Lothbrok, literally a name that paralyzed the entirety of Europe. For centuries, we've pictured these men as just towering giants of pure chaos, right? But the truth? Well, as you'll see in this explainer, the truth is actually far more terrifying. So, it brings us to this massive, mind-bending question. Honestly, the greatest historical paradox of the medieval world. How on earth did a group of isolated, starving farmers living on the freezing edges of the earth somehow conquer Europe? Like, how did people with absolutely nothing suddenly become this completely unstoppable war machine? To figure out this insane mutation, we have to look at one thing: absolute crushing desperation. Section 1, the Scandinavian struggle, from famine to expansion. Before the Viking Age even kicked off, the lands of Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, well, they weren't exactly the wealthy, thriving places we know today. They were brutal, just unbelievably unforgiving and dark. Waking up every day was a deadly gamble for mere survival. Because look at what happened in the 6th century. The skies literally choked. We're talking about a cataclysmic volcanic winter that blacked out the sun over Europe. Crops withered away, famine wiped out thousands upon thousands of people. It was apocalyptic. But then, fast forward to the 8th century and the ice finally thaws. The weather stabilizes and boom, it triggers this massive, explosive population boom. Suddenly, there are way too many people, and those harsh rocky fjords just couldn't feed everyone. Imagine being backed into a corner like that. If there's literally no food at home to feed your kids, you really only have one choice, right? You build a boat, and you go take it from someone else. Okay, we actually need to shatter a massive misconception right here, right now. Viking was never a bloodline. It wasn't a race, and it wasn't an ethnicity. In Old Norse, Viking was an activity. It was literally a job description. You could be a simple farmer or maybe a blacksmith, but the exact second you stepped onto a ship to go raid just to survive, that's when you became a Viking. It's crazy to think about. But you know, desperation alone doesn't forge a super soldier. So what actually made them so utterly fearless? Section 2. Gods, honor, and society, the mindset of a warrior. To truly understand their reign of terror, we have to step inside what was basically a deeply weaponized psychology. See, for the Vikings, the afterlife was basically this incredibly exclusive club, and the only price of admission was blood. Dying peacefully in your bed at an old age, that wasn't the goal at all. Actually, it was considered ordinary, sometimes even shameful. But dying violently, your lungs burning, a weapon gripped tightly in your hand on the blood-soaked battlefield, that right there was your golden ticket to Valhalla. A legendary, massive hall where you'd get to drink right alongside Odin, the god of war himself, just waiting for the apocalypse. Think about it. When your very religion demands a violent death as the highest possible honor, you become an entirely unstoppable, fearless force. But here's the thing. They definitely weren't the mindless barbarians pop culture makes them out to be. They were a hyper-competitive, deeply, deeply organized society. Down at the bottom, you had the thralls, enslaved prisoners of war. Above them were the carls, basically the everyday freemen. And right at the top, the jarls, the nobles. But here is the absolute genius of their society. They had this early parliament known as the Thing. I love that name. Literally, even just an ordinary dirt farmer could stand up, look a powerful king dead in the eye, and speak his mind. Your status wasn't permanently locked. You could actually climb the ranks through war. So looting wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about reputation. It was pure glory. And get this, it wasn't just the men hunting for that glory. For over a century, archaeologists obsessed over this one site in Sweden, the grave of BJ 581. Inside, they found this elite, legendary warrior, buried with swords, shields, full tactical gear. Everyone just assumed it was the ultimate alpha male, right? Well, recent DNA analysis completely shattered everything we thought we knew. This fearsome warlord? was actually a woman. Yeah, Viking women managed trade, they owned land, and absolutely, they took to the front lines as legendary shield maidens. Section 3. Masters of the Sea, the ultimate hybrid war machine. So, they had the desperation. They definitely had the fearless warriors. Now, they just needed the technology. And what they engineered next literally changed human history forever. The Viking longship was essentially the ultimate stealth predator of the ancient world. It was built with these overlapping clinker planks, meaning the hull didn't just shatter against massive ocean swells. Instead, it flexed and bent, almost like a living spine. And because of its impossibly shallow draft, they could cross a raging ocean, yet somehow glide silently in just inches of water, right into the heart of an unsuspecting city. But you want to know their most terrifying feature? Perfect symmetry. They could reverse direction instantly without even turning the boat around. They could strike like a lightning bolt and then just vanish right back into the mist. The sheer scale of this operation is honestly mind-numbing. 200. It took the wool of 200 sheep just to weave a single massive sail for one of these ships. Just one. Their entire society was mobilized for this, transforming what were once just simple rowboats into terrifying ocean-crossing juggernauts. The war machine was completely primed. It really just needed a target. Section 4. Beyond the bloodshed, the Lindisfarne raid, and global reach. Let's go to the summer of 793 AD, the exact moment the world changed forever. Imagine looking out into the morning fog, and suddenly these silent, dragon-headed ships emerge, heading straight for the holy island monastery of Lindisfarne in England. Now, to Christian Europe, a monastery was the absolute untouchable house of God. But to the Vikings, it was basically an unlocked bank vault full of gold. They slaughtered the monks, stripped the altars bare, and dragged the survivors away in chains. The psychological shockwave this sent across Europe was absolute. In fact, a terrified churchman at the time penned these incredibly chilling words. For 350 years, we and our forefathers have lived in this land, and never before has such terror appeared from the sea. Just like that, the Viking Age had officially begun. But, eventually, those hit-and-run raids just weren't enough anymore. The ambition swelled to a massive industrial scale. I mean, why steal a kingdom's gold when you can literally just steal the entire kingdom, right? In 866 AD, this completely unstoppable force, known as the Great Heathen Army, marched right on York. And they were led by Ragnar's absolutely terrifying son, Ivar the Boneless. The Vikings were evolving right in front of Europe's terrified eyes. They weren't just pirates anymore. They were conquerors. They were kings. But wait, here is a massive twist that history kind of tried to hide from us. English propaganda always painted these guys as mindless, filthy, grunting beasts. The actual reality? They were impeccably hygienic. Seriously. They bathed regularly, they carried these intricate little grooming tools, and they obsessed over their hair. In fact, English monks wrote these furious, panicked letters complaining that local English women were actually abandoning their husbands because they found the clean, well-groomed Vikings way more attractive. I mean, you really can't make this stuff up. So we really have to separate that bloody myth from the sprawling global reality. These people weren't just agents of chaos. They were arguably the most ambitious explorers and merchants on the entire planet at the time. From their Scandinavian strongholds, they built trade routes that stretched thousands of miles, all the way to the glittering markets of Baghdad, trading silver and silk. They navigated the freezing, brutal rivers of Russia. And get this, nearly 5 whole centuries before Christopher Columbus was even born, Leif Erikson actually sailed a longship across the terrifying, uncharted void of the Atlantic and set foot on North America. Just incredible. A lot of history books will try to tell you that the Viking Age ended in 1066, but that's kind of a lie, because they didn't disappear. They evolved. The very men who burned English churches to the ground eventually ended up building them. They married into the exact lands they conquered. They permanently wired themselves into the very DNA of the modern world, even down to the everyday English words we still speak right now, words like knife, window, and egg. These desperate, starving farmers from the frozen edge of the world didn't just conquer Europe. They became us. So I leave you with this. Were they really just the bloodthirsty monsters of the Dark Ages? Or were they actually the brutal architects of our modern world?